Hello, hello, and welcome to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show. I'm Shirley, clinical hypnotherapist with a private practice here in Southern California, advocate and mental health first responder at Whispering Zen Hypnotherapy and Wellness. So, thank you for coming to the show today, where you can come as you are and hopefully leave as you want to be. Do you wish you could more freely enjoy a more healthy habit or just get back to feeling like a better you? Then let's talk. Because although I do specialize working with the LGBTQIA community, I welcome and I work with everyone. So if you need help, I am here to help you. You can book online anytime at whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. So now for the show. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start the show like I always start the show because it helps gets us going. But it's important that everybody's in a nice, safe place. So you're not driving, you're not working things out, you're not working on a special project or trying to finish a special project. You're just in a nice, safe place in case you decide to close your eyes. So the first thing we want to do is take a nice deep breath. Hold it and exhale with a smile because we need to get it all going today. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to wiggle our toes. Yep, we are going to wiggle our toes. Get the blood glowing, the circulation going, wiggle those toes. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to wiggle your butt. Yep, go for it. Wiggle your buns. Wiggle those buns. Get it going because you can't do it without smiling while you're sitting there squeezing your cheeks in. And I love it. So, next thing we want to do is we want to take one more nice deep breath, hold it, and as you exhale, just say to yourself a wonderful affirmation like, I got this. It's going to be okay. No big deal. Because sometimes we need those little affirmations to get us going. And sometimes it's to get us going through the day, sometimes it's the week, sometimes it's just for the next hour to get yourself going and know that you're going to be okay. So, if you've got a little extra time, what we want to do is kind of roll your ankles just a little bit, maybe move your body around, roll those shoulders, roll your neck a little, get the blood circulating. Come on, let's go. And in just this short amount of time, you have now done everything and you have loosened up from your toes to your nose and above. And that is absolutely perfect because that's how we want to be you know that's how we want to react. So as I have talked about before, and I am a clinical hypnotherapist, so we work a lot with mental health and how to maintain it, and I like to come up with different discussions of things that maybe I haven't covered before. So I want you to get a little mental health inspiration, and you should take every opportunity to smile, and you should take every opportunity, especially if you have been diagnosed with something, whether it's a mental difficulty, a physical difficulty, whatever it may be, because you are not a diagnosis, my friend. You are a person, and that is how it should always be. So I'm so glad that you're with me here today. And we're going to cover a little bit different part of Weeble Kung Fu. Um, and Weeble Kung Fu is a way of becoming that person you wish you would have had growing up, or maybe just becoming a more authentic you and thinking more about you. So, as today is Valentine's Day, we're going to cover a little bit of that just to get it out of the way because I don't want you to think today's kind of has to do with Valentine's Day, but it kind of doesn't. So, what I love about Valentine's Day is that due to the Catholic Church, they recognize at least three people that could have been St. Valentine's, and all of them were martyred. So when people think of this as a big romantic thing, know that it didn't start out as a big romantic thing. And, you know, one version contends that Valentine was a priest during the third century in Rome, and the Pope decided that single men would be better as soldiers and not getting married. And when Valentine realized the injustice, he started marrying people in secret. And for that, once he was discovered, martyred, put to death. The second insists that Valentine was a bishop who was the true namesake of the holiday, and he too beheaded. So, another story, say that he may have been killed for attempting to help Christians escape Roman prisons, where they were often beaten and tortured. And according to one version of it, the imprisoned Valentine was actually sent. He actually sent a Valentine greeting after he fell in love with a girl, who was most likely, they think, the jailer's daughter, who he cured some way. And the daughter used to visit, and before his death, he allegedly wrote her a note that said, "From your Valentine," which that's why it's still used to this day. And although the truth behind Valentine's is a little murky, and but all the stories, appeal to a sympathetic, heroic, and mostly important, a romantic figure. But the first time Valentine's was ever brought up was by Geoffrey Chaucer, a poet who wrote a poem in 1375 that expressed a Valentine. But what I love, as I discovered, is that in the Victorian era, up through the 20th century, although some lovers exchanged the most flowery, elaborate, lazy trimmed cards expressing their undying love and devotion, some definitely did not. And they would write what was called and send what was called vinegar valentines. And they offered a stinging alternative. And my favorite of that was somebody had written a card that said, "To my Valentine, 'tis a lemon that I hand and bid you a skidoo because I love another and there's no chance for you." So people that think that anti-Valentine's was a new thing, it's been going on forever. So whether you look at the more romantic side or the more sour side, today we're actually not going to talk about either self-compassion. So we want to talk about self-compassion. And you know that I discussed the self-compassion clause, the self-compassion pause that we do because we are talking about self-compassion. And, I talk about this every week and I love talking about it. And the self compassion pause, which we will discuss again, but I might as well bring up now, is taking a moment to focus on your awareness of you. And it's about taking and putting your hand on your chest or giving yourself a hug, making some sort of physical contact with yourself and being aware of yourself. And by taking a few deep breaths and just making contact with that and acknowledging that whether you feel great or whether you don't, it's a way to practice the mindfulness and encourages mindfulness as a result. And it acknowledges as being real or hurtful, but giving yourself permission to feel it. Self compassion is all about giving yourself compassion. Self compassion is actually the ability to turn an understanding and acceptance and love inward, in towards you. And many people are able to extend that compassion outward, but find it difficult to extend the same compassion towards themselves. And they may see self compassion as an act of self indulgence. But extending self compassion towards yourself is not an act of selfishness or self indulgence or even self pity. In fact, self compassion can help relieve mental illnesses, and it can help you with things like anxiety and insecurity. And many mental health professionals, such as myself, help people develop compassion for themselves. In my case, I call it the self esteem relocation program. It's one of those funny ways of finding a way to acknowledge your self compassion. And it's a way for, you to find that in yourself because good or bad or whatever your situation is, it's about you. It's about taking care of you. Compassion is the ability to show empathy and love and concern for people who may be in a difficult situation. Where self-compassion is simply the ability to direct those same emotions within and accept yourself, particularly if you're having a hard time. That's when you need it the most. And, you know, people are so good at taking care of other people, but they fear that if they show themselves self compassion, that they're engaging in self indulgence or self pity. And it's not that. It's just the inability to accept areas of weakness that may lead to difficulty in achieving emotional well being. So, you're not showing self pity, you're not showing, an ego thing. It's about acknowledging the good and the bad. And studies show that, especially for women in the US, typically they show way less self compassion to themselves than men do. This may be particularly due to the fact that women are often societally assigned as the role of a caregiver. So whether you're male or female, but if you've been assigned the role of a caregiver, gender norms emphasize that nurturing and self-sacrificing. But you don't have to do that. A self-compassion researcher named Kristen Neff was the first to define the term in an academic sort of way and describe self-compassion as having three different elements. So the first is self-kindness, or refraining from harsh criticism on yourself. And that is so important. And recognizing one's own humanity, or the fact that people are imperfect and all people experience pain. That it's not just you, that you're not alone. And if you feel that way, you shouldn't have to feel like you're putting yourself down. And the last of these is my favorite friend and yours, mindfulness, are maintaining a non biased awareness of all of your experiences, whether those are painful or not, or rather than just ignoring and exaggerating the effect. So, being mindful is being in the present moment, whether it's good or bad, whether it's this or that, it's experiencing and acknowledging. And self compassion is also really confused or linked with self esteem. And the two are totally different. Self compassion and self esteem are not the same. Where self esteem focuses on favorable self realization and evaluation, especially if you have grand achievements, and self compassion is a form of self acceptance, even in the face of things not going right. And this emotion represents a shift from being able to be your best towards being just a person. You don't have to be the best at everything. And this is really hard for some people. And it's really hard on me. And we all try to be the absolute best at whatever we do. And it's acknowledging that when you're self accepting, it's acknowledging that you may not be the best at a specific thing, but maybe you're the best at just being you, being the best possible you. And knowing that whether you're really high up or you're not so high up, or you're just trying to figure things out, that you deserve respect and you deserve justification and love and acceptance. And where, on the other hand, high self esteem can lead this to the tendency to ignore or hide any personal flaws. So when you have self acceptance, you're accepting yourself, good, bad, or indifferent. But maybe with self esteem, you're leading, you're trying to hide yourself. So, as an alternative to self esteem, self compassion doesn't depend on either social comparisons or one's sense of personal success. So, it's just being you. The recognition and acceptance of one's flaws leads to growth and personal development in a way that self esteem may not. So, you're kind of getting that difference between self esteem and, self compassion, uh, and that they're not the same. And people who have little compassion might also have low self esteem. But both are important traits to self compassion. And researchers, I love talking about researchers because I don't want you to think I'm just pulling this stuff out. So, we go to the experts on these things, no matter how I may feel. And they're encouraged, they show that by fostering self esteem, especially at a young age, that you place the emphasis more on encouraging positive feelings and a belief of one being special, then people tend to develop individual competence in a particular area. So as a kid, you're kind of taught that self esteem is the most important thing. Whereas maybe we should teach kids that self compassion is kind of more of that. And high self esteem may facilitate the development of a basis viewed on the self and may make it difficult to improve on any of your flaws. So if all you're worrying about is self esteem and all of your perfections and all of your growth and all of your everything else, you're not actually acknowledging that it's okay to not be perfect at everything. And this isn't easy. That's why I wanted to talk about self esteem today. Because a lot of people, have this whole thing about their self esteem, their ego is huge, and that's so important. And it is important to a degree, but maybe we forget to take care of ourselves, you know? And those that have much higher self esteem may be more likely to, have difficulties in their relationships with others and tend to, engage in higher acts of anger or aggression towards those that threaten that self image. So, if this sounds familiar, maybe we need to work more on our self acceptance and our self compassion than just our self esteem. Because if all you're worried about is your self esteem, you're more likely to put others down to maintain your own inflated view of yourself. And nobody really wants that. When self compassion is focus of the development rather than self esteem, one's self and self worth tend to increase and is no longer a point of constant evaluation. So once you accept who you are and accept the good and accept the bad, then you're more on an even path. And self compassion doesn't depend on either social comparisons or your sense of personal success. Rather, the recognition and acceptance of your flaws that lead to your growth and your personal development. Because you're not going to grow as a person, or I'm not going to say you're not, but it's harder to grow as a person unless you're worried about your compassion, how you feel about yourself, how you treat yourself, you know? Um, and when you deal with self compassion, it has a tendency to lead to a greater sense of belonging. And whether it's belonging in a group, whether it's belonging in a situation, or just belonging as a human, that you belong, that you matter, that you're important, and you should always know how important you really are. That you're forgiving, that you can forgive yourself, that maybe you have a bad day, or maybe something's not quite, a failure. I believe in, epic, when you do things, you either have epic achievements or sometimes you have epic failures. And it's just as important that you acknowledge the epic failures, which we have all had epic failures. If you've never tried something and it has become an epic, oh my Lord, what happened? Then maybe you're worried more about your ego than you're worried about yourself. So just acknowledge I have lists of things that I have tried that I was positive I would know how to do that should be relatively easy. And in turn, wow, epic failure. And it's hard when that happens, when you realize that maybe you can't do everything, you know, maybe it, and it's hard and it's a recovery process, but that's part of development and self growth. And I look at some of the things that I have done that have become incredibly epic failures. And I can laugh at them now and go, what was I thinking? What brought that on that thought that I would be incredible at whatever it was, knowing that I had no experience, um, no, that my skill level was just not there. Um, we all love to believe that we can do everything, but then sometimes we have to realize that, you know, perfectionism doesn't always work. So, back to Dr. Kristen Neff that we talked about a little bit earlier, who has done a lot of self compassion research. And she also expresses that the same level of understanding and kindness to yourself when you make a mistake or even think that you failed at something. It's bringing awareness to your own internal processes and your own internal self criticism. We all have that little self criticism, but it's not as important to worry about that. It's more important. It's about raising your awareness and stopping that tendency of judging yourself for your shortcomings. It's about just, you know, think about it this way. If somebody that you love or a friend of yours and people were talking bad about that person, that you'd stop them and go, hey, stop it. You're talking about my friend. Well, we can be our own worst enemies and criticize ourselves worse than anybody can criticize you. We know this. We would stop somebody from criticizing our friends, but would you stop somebody from criticizing you? Or would you take it internally? Often that negative self talk begins in childhood. And when we're not taught as a child how to cope with things like that, then, and it may seem minor when we're as a kid because you overhear your parents or a caregiver or whatever. But, you know, the pattern can extend to adulthood without any awareness regarding critical self thought. If you're not taught about self compassion, but you're taught more about self awareness and what you think you hear, that's where we come into the difficulties when it starts as a kid and you have to grow and you have to expand, you know, and think about how many times a week do we have self-critical thoughts about ourselves. That's why I always talk about when I talk about, your 3 minute, you know, compassion, that, your first question is checking in with yourself and asking, how am I doing right now? If a thought comes to your mind that's really self-critical, ask yourself, stop and ask yourself, what happened? What brought on this thought? Where did it come from? Acknowledge that it's there. Never try to ignore a thought, good or bad. Never try to just go, oh, that's really weird, and push it aside. What you need to do is acknowledge it and go, where did it come from? You know, check in with yourself numerous times a day. I do this so many times a day where I check in with myself and go, how am I feeling right now? How am I doing? kind of like my self compassion pause. I have to check in with myself. We all should. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It's not one of those where you have to have a special time and a place and whatever. Um, is that you need to check in with yourself and you need to understand that the thoughts come and go, but they're okay. And self compassion is also associated with an increased emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back after adversity. That you have so much self compassion that you know that even if you have an epic fail, that you can come back from that. Researchers, again, my researchers, because I don't want you to think I'm making this stuff up, have found that practicing self compassion can create stable and continual changes in your mental health. And we're all about mental health here. And it can help, you know, make changes if you're dealing with depression or increased happiness. It can help both ways, whether you're dealing with depression and anxiety or whether you're getting used to feeling, more happy. And it inadvertently associates with, the psychology in general. And, this research has shown traits of self compassion are linked to areas, of greater happiness, of greater life satisfaction, and body appreciation. All of this is about the self compassion. And although some people may naturally possess higher traits of self compassion, you can learn to apply these self compassion by practicing. You there are ways. Do your self compassion pause. Do checking in with yourself and see how you're doing. Become more aware of that inner critic inside of you. We all know that it's there, but when you notice that self critical thoughts where you're starting to go, I can't do this, and I'm a failure, and no one likes me, pause and intervene. That's what it's about. It's about stopping those negative thoughts. Just picture a big stop sign and replace it with another thought. What would you say to your friend who are thinking these things about themselves? You know, what would you say to them? You need to say these things to yourself. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. I go through this constantly where I'm having to step back and go, you know, what would I say to a friend or what would I say to a client if they were thinking the same thing? And not trying to sound like a hypocrite or, you know, it's one of those things. And you have to take those self-compassion breaks. You know, we talk about your guided meditations, your breathing. Remember, we go back to the breathing thing. Loving kindness meditations. There are sites everywhere that have these short little 5-minute self compassion meditations if you need them. Or I've been known to make personalized ones for clients where if they ask, can you make it directly towards me? Of course I can. But if you just need something really quick and you don't have time, there's actually a whole website called selfcompassion.org. So it's this whole organization and this whole group of people, and that's what they deal with. I deal with it on a one on one, or sometimes I do group things, where it's all about that self compassion and that, self realization. The self esteem relocation program that we talked about earlier. That's what I call it because we're trying to get that self esteem and that self compassion right back at you. Now, it's hard, but you also have to realize that, suffering and maybe being a little more depressed is part of it. And it's not a great part, but understanding that it's just common humanity versus your own experiences that can help you put things in perspective and feel more connected. So, understand that although you may feel that you're the only one that feels this way, You're not. You're not alone. There are groups out there. There are so many groups out there that if you don't have access to personalized therapy or if you don't feel comfortable, there are so many groups that have people that can help you through this. I just recently joined a group that has to do with something that I've been dealing with my whole life and kind of thought that I was a little bit on the outside, which I acknowledge that. But as I'm looking at their posts and I'm interacting, I'm realizing that I'm not the only one that thinks like this. I'm not the only one. It's that connectiveness that sometimes we need to feel. Um, and it's not trying to over identify with your negative emotions by using mindfulness, it's using everything all the way around. And it's important to have balance with your negative and your positive. It's not letting one overtake the other, and using mindfulness as kind of a state of mind where you can observe those thoughts and feelings without being suppressed or without denying them. And that is so hard. That is one of those things that we have to deal with, but we can't let it overtake us. And I'm not saying anything that's mind blowing. I'm not saying anything that maybe you haven't before, but maybe putting it in a different perspective to where, when you're dealing with things and you're forgiving and you're nurturing yourself, then you're on a better state of helping your health, mentally and physically, or helping your relationships, or just your general well being. That's what it's about. It's about self compassion, yielding so many benefits, including lowering that anxiety and that depression. It's self compassion is a way that when you're feeling kind of anxious or you feel like you're suffering at certain times, it can help reduce that anxiety because you know that you can get through this. And it's about knowing in your heart and knowing that, I say things like put up affirmations everywhere. Put up, I got this. We can do this. You can make it through. And if seeing those little post-it notes that I have all over the place, or that you may have on your phone, or acknowledge, make little timers for yourself that, every couple hours you're going to check in with yourself. Think of how important that is, you know? And while some people are really lucky and they come by self-compassion naturally, others have to learn it. And you can learn it because it is a learnable skill. It's not something that you go, okay, well, after the age of whatever, I can no longer learn. No matter how old you are, you can learn self-compassion. You can learn well-being. You can learn that, it's okay to have comfort in your own body. Whether you take rest, take naps every once in a while, rest your body, massage your neck or your hands, take a walk, get out there, breathe some fresh air. Anything you can do to improve the way you feel physically gives you that dose of self-compassion. Because when you go out and you take a walk, or you go and you rest your body and your mind, you're not being lazy. You're taking care of you. And you know how I feel about taking care of you. You got to take care of you first. Whether you have a family, whether you are just in a relationship, whether you're by yourself, you have to take care of you first. Because think of it once again as if you're on a plane and it starts to go down and the air masks come down, and they always tell you to put on your mask first before you try to help anybody else. Because if you're not taking care of you first, you can't help anybody else because you're now unconscious. So this is all about, taking care of yourself, maybe writing a letter to yourself, describing why you're upset, why you feel the way you do, whether it's breaking up with somebody, job loss, whether you messed up a presentation, whether you missed a deadline, write a letter to yourself describing the situation, not blaming anyone, and then it's acknowledging your feelings. Now, after you write it, you can file it, you can tear it up, you can burn it, you can do whatever because it's not for anyone else. It's strictly for you. And sometimes writing it, for some people, writing things down, for me, writing things down is very important because that's my way of expressing how I feel step back. Now, for some people, expressing how they feel, maybe doing it through art or a project or whatever it is. It's a way of expressing these feelings, good, bad. Sometimes you just write down. Remember when everybody had a little diary, dear diary, today I feel like da 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 da. It's that same concept, only you don't have to keep it. Sometimes you don't want to be reminded of how you felt. And the most important thing to me and to a lot of these researchers is practicing mindfulness, non-judgmental observation of your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own actions without trying to suppress or deny them. Remember, we're not about suppressing thoughts and feelings. We're about acknowledging where we are. When you look in the mirror and maybe you don't like what you see, accept the bad, accept the good. Accept, if you have a great hair day, acknowledge it and go, I have a great hair day today. Nobody may see me, but my hair is on point. Or if, you wear makeup, or if you're working on a project and it turns out better than you thought. And acknowledge that and go, at the moment, I am having an incredible day because I figured this out and this project looks perfect and I may never do one like this again, but at the moment, I feel it. And let's say you're running behind on a project. Don't keep going. Things are going to be horrible. Da, da, da. Acknowledge that things may not be going the way you're going, but you can improve on them. All this is about acknowledging good or bad, acknowledging yes or no. It's about mindfulness is about being in the moment. It's about being where you are, centering yourself, not worrying too much about the past, not worrying about what's going to happen. It's being centered and in the middle. And that is so important. And it helps give you that encouragement that you might need. It helps give you comfort. It helps one way or the other. When you're doing your self compassion pause, it's wonderful. You have to take those breaks. And you have to sometimes leave your situation, leave your house, go for a walk. If you live in a place where they're still very much into masks or you feel uncomfortable going out without one, that's fine. Be cautious, but go out. If you can, smell the flowers. In some places, we have flowers that are blooming. In other places, you have flowers that maybe aren't blooming, but they're trying really hard. If you look for it, you can always find that one flower, that one tree that beyond what it's supposed to do at this time of the year, it is still growing and flourishing. And it's still trying. And think of yourself as that flower or that tree that beyond all odds in the middle of the winter, that thing is still going. It's still trying to grow. It's not worried about what it's supposed to be doing. It's not worried about this is the wrong time of year for me. It's saying, right now, at this moment, I'm going to be the best that I can be. This is what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm supposed to give somebody, a smile at me just trying to grow and flourish, that's perfect. I'm really lucky. I live in a place that, we have flowers blooming most of the time. It's in the middle of winter technically, and my spouse is still growing tomatoes. Um, whereas in other places, they're not even close to that. But, no matter where you live, find that thing, get out, take those breaks, acknowledge, everything. Acknowledge the good or the bad. We're worried about, we're not worried about it, but we're working on our self-compassion. We're working on what we can do for ourselves. Take note of your mental state at all times. And if you need to make an appointment with me or you need to make an appointment with somebody else, then do that. It's okay. It's perfectly fine to take care of yourself in your mental health. Mental health is something that people don't like to talk about a lot, and they're worried about. And so it's important that the stigma, you know, if you feel yourself starting to slide, find a group, find a person, find me. I'm everywhere on social media. I get text messages all the time. I get notices. During my show, I have my chat open, and people, will write me messages. And so I can acknowledge them and let them know that I got their message, or I can answer it later. You know, I'm always there and I'm always paying attention. And there are a lot of groups out there that if you're having problems with self-compassion, that they can help boost you up a little bit. And for some, dealing with self-compassion is hard and it's something you have to work with and work for because it's not natural for most people. Self-esteem is natural because that's what you're taught. You're taught be the best, do the best, find the best. And sometimes, we don't know how to handle things if we're not. So whether you're celebrating Valentine's Day for another person, make sure that you're celebrating or acknowledging you and acknowledging your best, acknowledging what makes you happy and you joyful. St. Valentine's was a martyr, one way or the other. Don't be a martyr. Don't do that. Celebrate the good and the flurry, and even if it's a nice calm evening with your pets, that's perfect. As long as you're acknowledging yourself and you're acknowledging that you're forgiving and you're nurturing yourself and you're helping your health and you're helping your relationships with yourself or with others. You're working on your general well-being. That's what this is about. It's about taking, care and taking note of your mental space and knowing that sometimes I give you a lot of information and I get really passionate about what I'm talking about. And if you didn't catch it all, or if you need to re-listen to it and you need to know that I'm here and that you're not alone, I repost everything. It's always on my Facebook page. It's always on my YouTube page, under videos that you can rewatch. Go by the date that's on it. This one is self-compassion. And if you need to feel that, somebody's on your side, I am always on your side. That when we do that self-compassion and when we do, our 3 minutes, our reminder of our tricks and our 3-minute breathing space, We're asking ourselves, how am I doing right now? A million times a day. Check in with you. Focus on your feelings. Focus on your thoughts, your sensations. Trying to get some words and going, I'm actually doing okay right now. Perfect. Or maybe I need a little help and I'm not doing okay. That's fine too. That's fine too. We're, every day is not about walking on sunshine and it's not all rainbows and sprinkles. Some days we're just trying to make it through the day and not beating ourselves up for not being the person that we think we should be. All of this is about becoming the person and becoming a better you. And I work on this every single day, becoming a better you, thinking a better you, being acknowledging that. And I think that that's something that you can do. I know it is. You know, practice your breathing. Know that if things get a little hard, just close your eyes. Not right now. Remember, safe place. But close your eyes and breathe and just let the thoughts come and go. You're not going to get them to disappear. You're never going to get the thoughts to disappear because keeping a quiet mind is the most challenging thing that can happen. Oh, thoughts pop in and out, and we're not trying to block them. But be aware. Slow your breathing down. Find that way that when you slow your breathing down and you're acknowledging it, that your shoulders are going down and your heart rate is slowing. And it'll slowly move. And it'll slowly and you can make it. And you can make it through the week. And we've made it through almost an hour of everything just being the way it is. We've acknowledged that and we've observed things, but we haven't let it be. It's our way of learning to smile, but maybe smiling's not that easy. It's okay. We take one day at a time. And I put these things out for you because I want you to make it through the day. And I want to get and keep yourself a little more mentally stronger by using breathing exercises and by focusing internally and asking for help when we start to slide. I have to ask for help when I start to slide. We all do. It's important to not feel like you can't ask for help, whether it's from a doctor. Oh, well, that was one just snuck up on me. Finding an online service to talk to, finding me to talk to. There are so many free services. Or if you need a little more time, I'm always here for you to make an appointment. So I encourage you to leave and become, get that fresh air. Notice the beauty around you. Remember that if you need extra help, I repost everything, but always take note of your mental space and be mindful of everything around you. Everything around you, you know? Um, so I want to thank you for listening today. It has been my pleasure to be even a small part of your journey. And I hope that maybe you learned a little, maybe it was a little comforting, or maybe a little soothing. And I hope that wherever you are, you're leaving a little more of who you want to be and that you got something out of this. And know that, I'm Shirley, clinical hypnotherapist, activist, mental health for first responder, and Whisperings in Hypnotherapy and Wellness. And I work together with my clients, maybe and we work as a team to find the best way to get you back to feeling a better you without fear or habit, without any type of pain or anxiety. And I work online, so I can be with you wherever you are. I can always be with you wherever you are. And I realize that hypnosis isn't for everybody and it kind of freaks some people out. So we can see if we can work together, see how that works for us. So I am Shirley. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and if you'd like to book an appointment for a consultation, you can always do that on whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. You can find me on every social network as the Hypno Fairy Godmother. And if you want to email me, you can do that either through the website or just hypnofairygodmother at Yahoo. And know that it has been my sincere pleasure to be there for you today. So we're going to take one more last deep breath. We're going to hold it and we're going to exhale with one last smile. So thanks for being here today. I want you to tell your friends about the show, and I promise I will see you next week. So take that last deep breath and know that I am here for you. I am always here for you, and I always will be. So have a wonderful, beautiful day, and I